winners? Let the pros show you how to make money. General Manager Al DeMarco, a regular contributor on Fox Sports, MSNBC, and Comcast Sports TV, brings over 25 years of handicapping experience to the table. CEO Steve Budin, the author of Bets, Drugs, and Rock and Roll, is the man responsible for creating the online betting industry. Together, they lead the world's largest online sports handicapping community, your #1 source for winners.
Boys and girls, this is a dictionary. Years before the internet, years before spell check on Internet Explorer and Microsoft Word, this is what people use. And I'm here to tell you today that guaranteed and gambling are not on the same page in this book. You won't find it. Proof positive of that fact, Monday night's game, San Diego and Kansas City. Steve, I'm sitting there. I've told everybody, and I've got myself my big play, the Chargers, -3, but I had bought the half-point insurance. I bought them down to 2.5. I am there, 48 seconds to go, the ball on the 16-yard line, and Phillip Rivers cannot handle the snap. Instead of the game-winning field goal, instead we go into overtime. Naturally, momentum swung Kansas City's way. And again, there are no guarantees in gambling. That is something I know for a fact in 25 years in the business. But guys, the other thing I also know is this. Sometimes the breaks go against you, but ultimately they always even out over the long run. Hi everyone, Al DeMarco here along with Steve Budin. This, the Countdown to Kickoff pregame show, the only nationally televised pregame show that breaks down every game from a point spread perspective each and every Sunday. Joining you here on set, I've been a professional sports handicapper for 25 years. Thought about ending it after Monday night, but I decided to come back for today's show.
Thank God.
Yes. Hey, guys, I used my experience that I gained from years ago from being a sports reporter, being on the sidelines, being in locker rooms around players and coaches. Did that for 8-9 years, covering every single sport. To me, when it comes to evaluating games, it all comes down to evaluating the personnel. It's not what you're going to find in books, even the dictionary. It's not what you're going to find in computer analysis and ATS mumbo-jumbo. It's how teams fare on the field. And yet, Steve, as a former bookmaker, a guy whose father was a well-known bookmaker, a guy who gave birth to the offshore sports betting industry that we now know today about 20 years ago, you know as well as I do, sometimes you just get a bad break.
And now especially, this is the toughest time of the year. We talked about it last week. Lines are sharper than ever. Every half a point counts, and it's now more than ever that I learned to rely and thank God for my sources, my contacts, my syndicates, my crews that are out there helping me, fight the fight because it's getting tougher out there.
And I'll tell you what, gamblers got bludgeoned in Vegas last week. It was one of those great weekends for the sports books.
A purging.
Because when you have so many favorites going down, but when you have the big name favorites going down, biggest one, of course, last week, Patriots, followed by the Ravens. When teams like that, public favorites, don't come in, you know the public money is on them already. Sportsbook operators, they are just counting the cash just like you used to do.
And it ramps it up for this week because those gamblers that lost last week on those marquee teams always make the mistake of bringing last week forward to this week and trying to make up for that lost money. And it never works out that way.
Absolutely. As a handicapper and a gambler, you have to have short-term memory deficit in this business. You cannot keep dwelling on the past. You've got to always focus on the next money-making opportunity. That's what we're here to do today, breaking down all your games. Next segment, about 5 minutes from now, guys, FYI, we'll have one of our usual contributors, Trace Adams, joining us from Atlanta, where he'll give you his 3 free picks. Plus, later in the show, we'll talk about an absolutely free chance for you to win $300 of my money playing fantasy football through DraftStreet.com. First game on the board, Steve, we've got an Atlanta Falcons team that's coming off a bye at Indianapolis. Of course, the Colts, their last 2 games, there's nothing good we can say after going to New Orleans and Tennessee. They lost those 2 games by a combined 89-17 score. Falcons, 10-4 ATS road run, albeit just 1-3 ATS on the road this year. They've also covered 9 of their last 12 against the AFC. I think this is a cheap price. I don't think suddenly the Colts are going to show up here and play great.
Well, the whole thing is how the Falcons come off the bye. And coming off the bye is the theme that we deal with going forward, from the middle of the season on. More and more we see some teams are helped to get healthier with the bye. Other teams lose focus, lose concentration during that week. I don't think that's going to happen for the Falcons because this is a must-win game for them. I think they show up, and I think, like you, I believe that 7 is a cheap spread here. I would lay the 7 against Indiana, a team that's in obviously the suck for luck contest.
Right, and listen, this is an Indianapolis team that's 2-6 against the spread this year. They've got a pass defense. The last 4 games, the pass defense has allowed 77% completions, 11 11 touchdown passes, 0 interceptions. And the Falcons, or the Colts' biggest problem is they only have 12 sacks on the year. So I think Matty Ryan is going to have a big game. But I think the key for the Falcons, as I've said repeatedly on the show this year, they've got to get Michael Turner involved in the offense early. If Michael Turner doesn't get 22 to 25 carries, I don't think the Falcons win. I've said it from day number one, and they've proven me right this season. So I lay the points with Atlanta. I would buy down the half point at your 7 or 7.5. Next game, New Orleans and Tampa. I happened to be in Tampa about 3 weeks ago when these two met. Saints just gave the game away. They were a 6-point road favorite in that contest. They lost the game outright, mainly because of turnovers. Drew Brees constantly getting picked off. But the other factor that played into the I was going to say the Devil Rays, the Buccaneers' favor in that game was that they had a strong ground game. Injuries have robbed them of their ground game. They're coming off a bye. Before that, they lost in London a couple weeks ago. So a difficult spot, I think, for them. And the Saints, of course, coming off a straight-up loss at St. Louis. And
I think for the Saints, it's so important that they have motivation. I mean, they're up and down like the stock market, but they always seem to play good right after they've been embarrassed. I think this is a spot for them where they'll be motivated, they'll come in, Drew Brees will go off, and they'll win this game and cover it easy.
Well, yeah, I'm agree with you because they're 3-0 ATS at home this season. They're 2-0 against the spread, coming off a straight-up loss this year, and I mean, they just hammered, if you remember, Indianapolis and the Chicago Bears following their 2 prior losses. And I think that this is a Tampa Bay team, though, that, you know, depending on the week, you never know what to expect.
That's for
This
sure.
is a team that went to San Francisco and got destroyed. This is a team that played awful in London with Josh Freeman getting intercepted 4 times. So I think that even though Tampa has done extremely well in this series on the road here of late, I think this is a go-against spot. I'm kind of surprised New Orleans isn't favored by more, but then I look at this and they're trying to lure you into taking Tampa, and yet the odds makers with this price still hedging their wagers a bit at 8.5.
Yeah, and I agree. And a lot of gamblers, you know, are scared to play on or against Tampa Bay because, like you said earlier, you just never know which one of them are going to show up. And is this the week that they come out and have the big breakout week? I say no way, not in New Orleans.
Well, guys, listen, in our next segment, we're going to have Trace Adams joining us from Atlanta via video conference. Among the games we're going to be talking about, Cleveland, Houston, God knows why, Cincinnati and Tennessee, and Dallas and Seattle. Of course, later in the show, we're going to be focusing on the 2 marquee games on today's board. 2 tough games, too.
Great games.
Giants and Patriots, first regular season meeting since that little Super Bowl clash a few years ago, and also that little game between Baltimore and Pittsburgh. See if the Steelers can follow the Patriots from a week ago with another win and get revenge from their season opening loss. We'll be back in just a moment right here on the Countdown to Kickoff show.